Converse Cowboy Journey has given me an opportunity to sit down with some amazing performers from all walks of life, where it is my job to tease out their habits and routines so that you can apply and test in your own life. I've learned, I've grown personally, I've been enlightened, and I've been humbled. Above all, I've realized there is no destination in this life, no goal achieved, or money made that can replace the feeling of flow and the pursuit of doing what you truly love to do. With a growth mindset, I'm constantly asking questions and pursuing knowledge. The Converse Cowboy is a platform that allows me to do just that. I'm excited and eager to share their stories with you all. I'm Mike Roberts, and this is the Converse Cowboy. People have been telling me, I guess over the past year, you need to have Monty Buntin on. You need to have Monty. You need to hear Monty's story.
Well, that's cool.
Finally made it happen. You're in California. I'm here in Texas. You're in town right now for the Super Stakes. I haven't really been paying attention, but like, how did it all go for you? I know the Open's over now. But
Well, first of all, I appreciate you having me on. I mean, it's an honor to be on this deal. I do enjoy and watch these, and that you do, and I think they're really cool. And you get a lot of inside information, things you never really knew about people. You know, and I think that's really awesome for this industry or for the cowboy world in general.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you saying that, and it would be the amount of knowledge that gets shared on this show is awesome. I wish I could retain that and apply it, because I'd be the next Lloyd Cox with all the information that's shared here. But
yeah, well, you can't help but improve if you're keeping your attention to this kind of stuff, and that's why I like to watch them. But anyway, the Super Stakes went really well for me. I was very, very grateful. I made the finals on the mare that I trained for Dave Levisay, and that I had high expectations for going into the futurity, and I did a terrible job at the futurity, and that been eating on me, you know, since the futurity, of course. And I thought I learned a lot at the futurity about showing and training and stuff, some things preparing that would be hard to explain, but I was so anxious to put them to work here at the Super Stakes, and I was able to do really well on her. Finished sort of high up, middle of the pack, but leading the Metallics MVP incentive, which pays extremely well. So that depends on the non-pro, because it's a composite score to those that are eligible in the non-pro and the Open, combined score from the 4 rounds. You know, mine's pretty high, so I think I got a really good shot at winning that. If not, I'll place for sure. All in all, you know, we're going to get a really good payday at the Super Stakes this year, and I had 2 others. I got all 3 of my 4-year-olds back to the semis. Yeah, I'm very grateful. I had a great show.
Right on, man. So for those of you guys watching or listening, there's 3 big Fort Worth shows a year, the futurity being like the Super Bowl for these cutting horse trainers, and now we're in the Super Stakes, and this is like the first show after the futurity for these now 4-year-olds. But you mentioned something about learning a lot of lessons at the 2024 futurity. Can you share some of those?
Yeah, I could try. You know, I mean, I do a lot of clinics, and I teach showmanship, and I've studied it my whole life. You know, to me, the key to success in anything you want to do is to find the people that you think are great and figure out the common denominators. I mean, everybody can be different stylistically. I mean, Austin Shepard is a big guy with long stirrups, and Matt Gaines is a short guy with short stirrups, and the styles are completely different, but what do they do that's the same? I've really analyzed that and broke it down, and make an effort to share that and teach people in the clinics that Tim Smith and I do. And so what was so frustrating for me at the futurity was I followed all the steps that I teach. I executed everything properly in terms of preparation. But the one thing I hadn't really ever considered, probably this is the biggest thing that I would say I learned at the futurity, was the importance of feeling normal to your horse. What happens is, you know, you can go execute all these same steps with sort of a desperate or a too intense energy. You know, I'm a determined personality. So my mare, you know, I pre-worked her, several pre-works, put my hand down and could show her, and we never missed a cow. Everything was comfortable and groovy. You know, I practiced all the execution that I teach myself and my customers and stuff. And when I went to the futurity and put my hand down, I was so determined not to miss, and I was so I've explained it this way to people. Imagine you wear a backpack all the time, hike with it, and you walk with it, and you do all kinds of things with it. And then all of a sudden, you're in the middle of climbing a mountain, and the straps just all tighten down on the backpack, you know, for no reason. Well, it would throw you off your game, don't you think? So what I was so excited to start out this year applying was, I've always said that the difference between being good at something and great at something is the amount of things being done on purpose. More purposefully feeling normal to my horse. I don't want him to think anything's different, so I'm not crouched so deep in the saddle, not so intense, not so on the muscle. The realization of that, you know, you can look at all the greats, everybody doing well. Kenny Platt, watch him right now. I mean, he could have a conversation with you while one of them good horses is swooping around. I mean, and I watched Adon the other day. Riley Palmer, that works for me, was laughing because Adon is putting his hand down as he was telling Jesse that a cow they liked has a sore eye, and I mean, he's working a cow. So the composure, and I've always preached composure, but the feeling normal to the horse. Don't make the horse feel like anything's different. So that's, like I said, that's kind of complex or hard to explain, but that's what I mean by that.
Yeah, and that's wild to hear you saying that. Like, I'm sure it's something you've always known. You've been doing this for quite some time and got a number of buckles to show for it.
That was the frustrating part. Was I knew that, but like I said a minute ago, I wasn't doing it on purpose. Mm-hmm. So now I purposefully go in there with a normal energy and a normal composure to purposefully feel normal to my horse, even if I'm a little out of whack or something. And I'm the kind of person, like I said, that has a lot of determination. I want to keep control every element I can to the max possibility, and sometimes that intensity throws a horse off its game, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and especially in the game of cutting, there's so many variables that are outside of your control to be intentional and to focus on what you can control.
Yeah. I've always viewed that, like a lot of people say, you know, wonder what your competition is, and everybody agrees that it's not the other competitors, and most people agree that the competition is the cows, and I don't even necessarily agree with that. I've always said, or within recent years said, that the competition is the judge's card. It really has nothing to do with the cows either, because everybody's cutting the same cows. Cows are tough. Cows are easy. They're good. Doesn't really matter. The competition is the plus or minus side of the judge's card.
Scorecard, yeah.
And so I always think of it like that when I'm cutting. I'm competing against that pen that's about to hit that paper. Am I causing it to put a plus down? Am I causing it to put a minus down? Or, you know, time worked and amount of courage. When I decide to stay on a cow, I'm competing against that pen that's about to hit that card. So the guy that's up there, he judging, it has really not a lot to do with him. I mean, their opinion does matter, but they got a set of rules they got to follow, you know. So really, they're just the guy putting the pen to the paper. That's your competition, is that. It's what gets written down.
I guess it would have been not last futurity, but the futurity before. I did a special on Jesse Lennox, and we followed him around. So we recorded something like in the Coliseum before anybody got there, and I was like, I wonder what. I think I've talked about this on a podcast before, but I was like, I wonder what it looks like from that judge's stand. So I climbed my ass up in there, and I looked down, and dude, it was scary, like how
right
visible, and like it's like a magnifying glass. Like you may think you're hiding something, you're not hiding
It is
shit.
right there, and especially in Fort Worth, you know, you're so high up when you're judging. When they drive a cow up to you, they are right there. It's not like a weekend show where you feel like it's a little ways away. Oh, did he, you know, move his hand a little, or, you know, it is right in your business when you're judging, and it's very intimidating.
Yeah, and it's lit up.
Yes.
You can see everything.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah. Man, we're going to bounce around a good bit. I do want to go back to the beginning at some point. But before we do, since we're on this, the showmanship and talking about Fort Worth, I've been in this cutting game, I don't know, about 5 years now. But I can, I used to sit and watch and study. And I can remember watching you, and you weren't even showing. I think you were helping like a non-pro or something. But like some of the cues or some of the coaching you were doing from the corner caught my attention. And you were talking about energy and slow down, which I think is something y'all could just play on repeat to the amateurs and non-pro. But can you talk about, we'll get into the coaching, but I'd love to hear like your pregame ritual, your pregame mantra, because I'm assuming what you're coaching others is what you're telling yourself to do on some level.
Yep, on every level. I mean, That's really what I try to teach people, is to coach yourself. I think that frustration starts where knowledge ends, and real confidence comes from knowledge, really knowing what you're doing. So I teach people, or I try to coach myself. If I don't know what I'm doing, I spend a lot of thought and time trying to figure out what it is that I don't know. But so I don't really have a ritual. I don't have anything I go through. But what I try to do is keep my concentration on execution, not results. And that's the hardest thing in competition. I think it's against human nature to not care, worry about whether you're going to win or not, but really be in the moment executing the process, which you know very well. And if you don't know, that's where the frustration comes in, because you don't know why it went wrong. I have rules that I follow in terms of cutting a cow. Communicate, locate, position, and execute. Stop if the cow stops, move if the cow moves, go up without hesitation when there's separation. I mean, it's really you can watch every great cut. You watch Lloyd, Adon, Austin, Kenny, any of them, going right now, and every one of them follows that process. You know, they may not have it broke down in their minds quite as much as I've thought it through so I could teach it, but they do. I mean, you don't ever see them when they do mess up a cut. It's one of those things went wrong. You know, I really try to get my mind on the execution. You know, I think it was an advantage for me to learn how to show before I learned how to train a horse very well, because I'm not distracted by a horse as easily as somebody that really could train a really good horse before they showed. When your hands down, you know, like I said, the competition is the judge's card. There's nothing on the judge's card that talks about whether a horse moved their hind feet correctly through a turn or brought their nose perfectly through a turn, or you know, there's just nothing for that. It's how it's presented and how the horse presents itself. Eye appeal. Is it desire? Like Paul Hansma told me one time, he said, when you go to buy a horse, go way more off what you see than what you feel. You can change what you feel, you can't change what you see. You know, how you present your cutting horse, the way that it moves naturally and the most efficiently for it is, I think, more impressive than a horse that is fundamentally good. It's not as important as we think it is. So where I was going with that, but when I put my hand down, my job is to not miss. Don't have a miss. That's my job. And then beyond that, if I can get more turns. And then beyond that, if I can make it, you know, a little more degree of difficulty, or you know, come on a little stronger. But my first job is don't miss. That's what the judge has to take away from me. Right. That's what the card has to take away from me. And then beyond that, I can start adding. You know, get accurate, don't miss, and then I can start stay longer. I can push a little harder, those kind of things. But first jobs, don't miss. So I try to coach myself through that process. Get a cow cut with those steps. Put my hand down, don't miss. Okay, I'm feeling good, feeling groovy. Now stay longer, just ride a little stronger, those kind of things.
If we back up a little bit in that process, that's the showmanship part of it. But I think it's known throughout the industry, your mental game is very strong. And I'd love to hear about that. So from the minute you leave that cow box from walking down, going underneath that tunnel in Fort Worth, getting on your horse, what's going through your brain?
Well, to add to what I was saying about the futurity, about feeling normal to my horse, another thing that was sort of a realization to me that I'm very grateful for was, you know, Tim Castelaw has kind of tried to tell me this forever. He'd always tell me, just be Monty. And, you know, he's a great friend of mine and been a sort of a life coach and a mentor. And I didn't really ever know what he meant by that. But I guess my perception of it was I need to stop pretending this is difficult for me. You know, you go down to the herd and I do this every day. On the weekends, I've made just about every major finals, and I've won some big events, and I'm not saying that to be boastful. I'm just saying I've had a lot of success in the show pen, and I think that at some point in a young person's career, anybody showing, they need to stop pretending that it's difficult. It's that anxiety, that you know, I was always one of those people that was always kind of coaching my turn back help. Come on, real easy, you know, all those kind of things. And I think when I kind of realized that this is not hard for me anymore, it's not supposed to be hard for me. And so usually I just try to remind myself of that before I go down there. This is what I do. You know what I mean? This is what I do every day. I live and breathe it. It's not like I'm going to, you know, run heavy equipment. I have no idea, you know, and I'm worried about tipping it over or wrecking or crashing into something. Yeah. I mean, that would be hard for me. This is not supposed to be. So I try to get myself in the mindset of this is not a complicated process for me, you know.
Yeah.
But I really just, like I was trying to explain there when I got into all that, was I really try to get my mind on execution. I start to think my way through the process of presenting my cutting horse, and that way I'm thinking about that, and it keeps me from feeling desperate to do good. I can tell you a quick story about where I got that. I went to a roping clinic during COVID because I had the time, and they had it at my place. And long story short, I do great, learning a lot of lessons and steps and stuff like that. And then we have a roping at the very end. And the gentleman says, you know, all right, guys, get after it. And I go out there and I throw caution to the wind, and all I'm trying to do is catch because I want to win the buckle, you know. And about 3 steers in, I'm doing okay, catching a leg. And Jake, that was doing the clinic, comes up to me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to win the buckle. What do you think I'm doing? This is what we do. You know, I'm a competitive guy." And he said, "Oh, you're trying to catch." And I said, "Well, yeah." And he says, "Oh, we never, not one time in the last 3 days talked about catching." So that wasn't what, he said, "I feel like I might fail you as a coach here because you're trying to catch. I never once told you, hey, catch the feet. I told you to get in position, wind up your rope, get the top strand on the right hop." He said, "So you're distracted by the result. And you need to focus on what gets you the result, which is the execution." And that really hit home with me. And you can compare that to a lot of things in life, or just about anything in competition. I thought that was kind of a game changer.
Hell yeah, because you have no control really. You can influence the result, but you don't have control over.
It's the result is a
turns out.
distraction from doing a good job.
Yeah.
You know, I was talking, me and Jesse, you know, he's a good friend of mine, and I really enjoy talking about all this stuff with him. And
Jesse Lennox.
and we were talking about one time, and I said we were just getting ready for the futurity, and I said, I wonder how good we could be if we cared more about doing a good job than we did if we did doing good. You know, how good could a person be? And I don't think we'll ever know.
He quoted you, I think, saying that in the last podcast.
Oh, really?
Him and I did, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've learned so much because he's a student of the game, and I really appreciate that. And so I enjoy watching him. I mean, me and him started the same time. Made the fraternity finals the same year the first time. So it's always been, you know, we've sort of gone through a lot of the same things, and I think, and he's learned faster than me in most ways, probably, but you know, had a ton of success, and I admire him as a friend and as a competitor and all those things. But I enjoy having those kind of conversations with him because he's a real student of the game, and I really appreciate that. Same thing can go for Jose Cruz. You know, you have certain people that you enjoy delving into these things with, but I don't think we could really ever know, because we're all competitive. That's why we do this. But how good you could be if you didn't care if you did good or not. You just only cared if you did a great job.
That's beautiful, man. You know, I think it was Matt Gaines that told me, like, that's why people get nervous, is because they're worried about the outcome.
Yep.
You know, if you didn't give a shit if, you know, whether you won or lost or got the buckle, you just go do the thing.
Just execute the process.
And so I think, you know, we were roping yesterday, and we always like set up scenarios. Okay, we're high call on the short go, just to try to like
Put that
provoke
pressure.
those nerves, you know, because they're gonna come. It's like, how do you maintain them? You know, how do you control where those butterflies go?
Can you still execute under that same kind of pressure?
Yeah.
But pressure, I heard Gavin Jordan say one time, pressure's pretend, it's perceived, it's not real. There's nothing real about it. Yeah, I've heard stuff like that, and I've heard Matt talk about, I try to focus on my job. He said that for years. And to me, it didn't, I understood it, but it didn't really hit home with me. I had to really think it through. I'm like, well, of course you want to do your job. You know, we all want to do our job, you know, but now I understand more after delving into the idea of it a little more, of what it actually means to when he says, I just want to do my job. In other words, you know, I'm not worried about the outcome at the moment. I need to make sure that I'm paid to do a job, you know, and I need to go do that job. The results out of my control. I really think that that's a key, but boy, what a hard thing it is to do every time.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier, the difference between the goods and then the greats. I think it's in the details, and in those, I truly think it's in the mindset. Is what separates those great at anything.
And to me, the mindset is what's on their mind to do on purpose. You know, people talk about strong mental game, weak mental game. Well, everybody that doesn't know what they're doing has a weak mental game, because frustration starts right there where knowledge ends. So, you know, my advice to somebody that's getting frustrated and you know and having trouble in those ways is be a student of the game. I've told the guys that work for me and a lot of I'm like, find the common denominators. Find what do all these guys do the same? What do they have in common? What does Lloyd, who does nothing like, you know, Roger Wagner stylistically, what do they do the same? That's where the strong mindset really comes from. It's not pretend. It's not waking up in the morning, looking in the mirror and telling yourself you're good. And I'm not saying that some of that's not a good idea to pump yourself up, but I'm saying real confidence comes from real knowledge. Get to figure it out. People that get good, they spend a lot of time thinking. I mean, you know, they're not spending much time with an empty mind or out. You know, if I go out and hang out and go have a drink with somebody, I go out and have a drink with Kenny Platt, or you know, me and Kenny and Cookie went and had dinner last night. I'm going to hang around the kind of people that are going to make me better. You know, those kind of things.
Because you were talking about the belief, having belief in yourself, and I think that it's weird. It's like, which comes first? Does the belief come first, or does the confidence come from doing the thing? You know, and so your quote says, there were a lot of people that thought I was crazy, but I only paid attention to the few people that believed in me. And this would have been like earlier in your career, I believe you're referring to. At what point did you buy into the belief that you were good enough to do this for a living?
I don't know if I could name a time. I'm not sure if I do yet, but I've done a lot of reading, you know, on some people might think this is a little odd, but I really believe that you get better at what you put your attention to. And I think I learned some of that on accident. Growing up as a kid, I was told by a lot of people that horse training was a thing of the past. It's all I ever wanted to do. I never considered another direction in life. There was a horse trainer lived not very far from me, Ned Lee, that I cleaned stalls for when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, and I thought he was the coolest guy ever. I mean, he could get a horse to do anything he wanted it to do, and I was horse crazy, you know. When I was 16, I read some book about the power sort of your subconscious mind, and then since then, of course, you know, it's kind of become a real passion of mine to understand it. You see a lot of people do the same thing, work very hard, try very hard, and another person work very hard, try very hard with an equal amount of talent, and one person succeeds and the other doesn't. And I think the reason that is because what matters is what you have your attention on while you're working. Mm-hmm. It's the person that is considering different avenues if it doesn't work, and the person that is not believing people are watching them, judging them, instead of believing people are watching them, trying to figure out what they're doing because it looks good. What you see in your mind is what you ultimately hold in your hands, I think. But you can't just do that and not work either. You know, what matters is what you keep your attention on while you're working. I learned that when I was about 16, and that's been a constant challenge for me, I think, throughout my life, to remind myself of that and to continue to improve my mindset that way.
What was the book, Think and Grow Rich?
No, it was called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles, and he had The Science of Being Great and The Science of Being Well. To me, those were, you know, they were all sort of Bible-based almost. I got it. I was in a bookstore with my wife. She maybe wasn't my wife yet. I was just 16, but she liked to read. I didn't go to school. I didn't really read very well. Not that I do now, but there was an audio book that said The Science of Getting Rich, you know, and I've always been passionate about trying to be successful, and I just thought, well, that seems like a good science to know, you know. So I grabbed it, and when I would clean stalls, you know, I would put it in my truck and play it out loud while I'd clean stalls, and it fascinated me. And so I proved it to myself through writing some things down that I was going to go ahead and change in my life, and then I would apply it. It's been amazing. It's been unbelievable.
Yeah, the law of attraction. It's a real thing, much like the law of gravity.
It's the same. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're, I say it all the time. Like if we're shopping for a white Toyota 4Runner, and that's all we're looking at and we're thinking about and Googling, well, all of a sudden we're going to start seeing these white Toyota 4Runners all over the fucking place. And it's not like they just started making more.
Nope.
It's like that's where our attention is. That's where our energy is on that thing.
Yeah, I mean, I've told like my little brothers, nephews, and all that, and I said, you know, if you wanted to build a house, I said, and then that's as far as you got with it in your mind, and you know, you notice houses all the time. I said, but if you decide how high you want the ceiling, what color you want the floor, and how you want to have what color you want the walls, what you want your driveway to look like, and the next time you're in Home Depot and you see that they're giving away because they're overstocked stuff that, you know, what was in your mind about the house you want to build, and without having the vision in your mind, you wouldn't have noticed that is the tile that you want in your house. Without taking the time to build the image in your mind, you'd have never noticed. You see what I'm saying? So to me, that's how it works. That's a part of how it works. You're not going to recognize things that helping you get towards the desires of your heart or what you want in your life if you haven't. You know, it says in that book, it says if I'm going to write you an email requesting something for you to send to me, I'm not going to send the alphabet and expect you to put it together. That's my job, to take the time to put the letters in the right place so you can understand it. And to me, that's the way it is in life. If we don't know what we want within detail, then it just fast tracks the process. If you the more down to the detail that you know what you want.
Yeah, I've never heard it said that way. That's so true, though. Energy does move faster than matter. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about that. Have you read it's a book called You Are the Placebo? I've referenced it several times.
I have not, but I have heard about that, and I would like to.
Yeah, he puts science and data behind Napoleon Hills of the world, the Bob Proctors of the world. But I think when you can combine that, like a intentional thought process, intentional mindset, along with action, I mean, that just compounds.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. I mean, it still just blows my mind all the time when I think about it, and I try to just live that way. And I'm not trying to live in a fantasy world all the time and just thinking about all the things I want. But I do remember when my wife was pregnant, I went in the Hall of Fame that same year. I was 27, and we had been married for 11 years. I had made the Hall of Fame. I'd made the futurity finals. I'd made the open world finals, and I thought to myself, I was kind of bored, and I thought, I've accomplished everything I ever wanted to do my whole life. Everything.
Scary, isn't it?
It was unbelievable. I thought about it, and boy, I really did some thinking then about what to do, because I almost felt like, it was a little almost frustrating, you know, because it had actually all happened, which is I'm unbelievably grateful for. I don't mean to say that in a way that comes across the wrong, you know, boastful or not thankful for it. It's just it's amazing how fast it all happens if you and like I said, you have to keep your attention on what you want while you work. It's not just sitting around thinking about what you want all the time. You got to work towards it. It's not gonna come finding its way into your pocket.
Yeah. Well, I don't take that as boastful in any way. I think it's important though. Like, we set these goals and we check these boxes that we think are success or that will make us happy, and then you get them checked and then you do the thing. If you are not grateful or you don't have gratitude for those things, it does just become like, because I've done the same thing. I make the vision boards, I check the list, and before I found this thing, this superpower that is called gratitude, dude, it was a tough life, man. You're on this hedonic treadmill, just chasing, and it never ends. That thirst is never quenched. So
I write a lot of things down for my son, that's 5, and I write things down that sort of resonate with me, and I don't know where I heard this or what, but I wrote down that gratitude fuels generosity. And it does that from the world, and it does that with interactions with people, and I feel like that dawned on me with Steve Morgan, who's a really close friend of mine and a customer. And, like he was, when I met him, I didn't have very much, and he was building me a facility that was unbelievable and doing all these things for me. But he was always thankful that I was coming, always telling me how grateful he was that I was going to be a part of that place and that I was in his daughter's lives and all these things. And it was just like, what is he even talking about? You know what I mean? Like I'm the one getting the gain here, but I realized, that he understands that really well. And then as I got to know him so good, and I tried to always show him that I was grateful for everything that he was offering me. And then now between the two of us, it's like one of us tries to sneak off when we go to dinner to get the dinner bill, you know what I mean? Because because we want to out-love each other and out-gratitude each other, and so every opportunity he gets to do something nice for me, it's like a gotcha moment, but that's how it works in life. If people know that they're grateful for what you have to offer them, and the world knows that, or the universe knows that you're grateful for what it has to offer you, and it works the other way too, if the opposite of gratitude decreases.
100%.
Yeah.
It's very reciprocal, but I feel like it's very much like if you were to walk into the cabin on a wintry day, you can't just walk up to the fireplace and stare at it and say, give me heat. You got to put wood on it. You got to light the damn thing. You got to cultivate this fire. And gratitude's the same way. You almost have to have gratitude for the thing as if it has already happened. Yeah,
I agree. That's a hard thing to do, but I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, it's a perspective, it's a choice.
I suppose that is what faith is. The ability to be grateful for something, wanting something bad enough that it stays in your mind, is proof that you're capable of it. If you can be grateful of something you want that bad, knowing that it wants you as bad or worse than you want it, that's, I guess, what faith is.
Yeah, and the longer you can hold it in your mind, the more real it becomes.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's another quote that you said. I forget what interview I found this in, but you say, in order to be successful, you have to be chasing something, and something has to be chasing you. And then you go on to say, what's chasing me is poverty and failure.
What I mean by that, I guess, is without telling you a little bit about my childhood or about my journey as a kid, it's a little hard for people to understand why it's somewhat emotional for me to and coming from a place of gratitude that I am where I am in life, and which may not be special to some people, but it's everything to me.
And feel free to go there. Feel free to explain as much as you want.
Okay. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time on it, but basically, I grew up in Paulden, Arizona, which is a very desolate place in the world. Out in the middle of nowhere. It was at that time in Arizona, sort of between Ash Fork and Chino Valley, or easier to understand, maybe near Prescott, but out in the desert. When we first moved there, I was 4 or 5 years old. My parents had just gotten married. They had maybe 8 kids at that time, ended up being 10. All we had was horses and dogs and sheep and goats, and we had 10 or 12 acres out there, and we had a really good life. My dad had a pump business, and my mom, took care of the kids and stuff, and then things kind of went south in my parents' lives, and they got a divorce when I was 9, and we had to choose. We didn't get to do the shared custody deal, and I stayed with my mom. My dad didn't live far away, but we didn't have much of a relationship, and he was always very against. He loved that I was a cowboy because he was a cowboy, but he was very against me training horses. He told me a number of times that I'd end up working for him if I tried, and because it was a thing of the past. He believed that. He didn't really know this world, maybe the performance horse world, but that just hurt me real bad because it's all I wanted. Mom ends up making some bad choices in her life, and the stress of the family breaking up and everything drove her to some things that she's not real proud of, but she's doing well now for the record. But, having some pretty hard times. I didn't really go to very much school. The last time I was in school was in the middle of 8th grade, and I dropped out. Before that, of course, we spent some time running from Child Protective Services and the law, and, had some times homeless, and, we ended up in Gulfport, Mississippi, and lived there and sort of in a van sometimes and in a homeless shelter, and there was 5 or 6 of us kids there, and I would always try to find the horse communities and keep it was still my goal to be a horse trainer, and I wasn't going to give up on it. And I ended up making some really good connections in San Antonio on that trip, on that journey we had, trying to stay away from the area where we were being looked for. And I made a really good connection with a great person in my life at that time. Yancey James was his name, and we ended up back in Arizona, and things sort of went down the same road and weren't really going to be a healthy way to live. And I was able to get a job working for Yancey James in San Antonio. And I think he knew how old I was.
How old were you?
I was 14. And at the time when I moved in there, he was single, and I lived with him in his house in a separate bedroom. He ultimately got married, and there was a loft and a tack room there at that place, and I lived there with another guy that worked for him. And he didn't really need my help, but he liked me, and I think he was impressed with my ability with the horses and as much time as I'd put into learning at that age. And I really felt, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, about what you hold in your mind. My deal when I went there was I was able to pretend that I was something I wasn't. I was able to pretend that I was at that time I would watch Chris Cox and Clinton Anderson, and my goal, I wanted to be a clinician. I didn't think I could ever reach to be a performance horse trainer. I didn't think that was possible for me. That's not for guys from Polden, Arizona, but I really had a dream in my heart to be a horse trainer and to be known as a horse trainer. So I was able to go there and sort of, he allowed me to be the trainer, the resident trainer there kind of, and he had a lot of friends that would send thoroughbreds and Arabs and whatever, for me to work with, and the problems that they had, and horses that wouldn't load, and horses that were hot in the box. He had a lot of team roping friends, and hey, let Monty ride them for a while. They'll get better. He's really good at it. And without him, putting the word in for me, it had never been possible. But that was a great time, in my life. And I got to wake up every day and pretend I was, on the road to being Clinton Anderson or Chris Cox or something like that. So ultimately, I meet my wife when I was 16. We got married a little less than a year later. I just turned 17. I think she was 19. And try to make a long story short here, I ended up getting into the cutting through Yancey. He was friends with Lance Harold. I worked for Salvador Cabral Java when I was 15, 16. And then I got a job working for Bob Adkins in Sweetwater, Texas. Same thing. I didn't really know much about training and cutting horses. I had spent some time around Buster through some friends of Yancey's. And that whole deal was just amazing to me. And on YouTube, there was videos of Tag Rice winning the Triple Crown and the Rice Way, that video that him and Ronnie made. And so I would just take everything I had and, try to make myself and everybody around me believe that I was a cutting horse trainer, Mm-hmm. And then got an opportunity to work for Tim Smith, and I went to California and worked for him. And then basically the reason I share all that stuff is because all of a sudden it kind of dawned on me that I might actually make it, might actually get to do this. This is for real. Mm-hmm. And I did do I did clinics and stuff. I did several, and they were successful. I really enjoyed doing them. My wife put some on. I did my first my first colt starting clinic when I was 11, which there's some pictures of that just recently came out that I never knew were there, which was pretty awesome. So, I was always on that journey and wanted to do that, but the realization that this might actually work. But because there was a lot of people that had told me that I was crazy and that I couldn't do it, and nobody thought I should get married, and they all thought that it was going to fail, a lot of the people. But there was 3 or 4, my mom, my grandma, Yancey, Jeff Jefferson there's such a long story, I can't tell it all, but Jeff is a guy horse trader in Colorado I used to go spend time with. And he was an amazing horseman, and he always really impressed me. And all those people were the ones that, would tell me, hey, you're good at this. And I would just try to just think of what they would say and not the ones that said I couldn't. And, and then I kind of just disappeared for a long time. I didn't talk to any of those people for 10 or 15 years. And almost, I guess the reason I didn't talk to them was because I was afraid that they might still think there's a chance it wasn't going to work, So it took me a lot of success to be brave enough to call them and tell them that I was doing it,
Yeah.
because that really affected me, and for them to, if I were to talk to them and they were to give me any inclination that I wasn't full of shit, or it really wasn't going the way I said it was going, or I really didn't have all those horses in training or something, that would have bothered me. That would have hurt me, because they were the ones I was using in my mind,
Yeah, yeah. That story could have went one of two ways. It's like the twins that grow up with a dad that's a drunk, and one becomes a drunk and blames it on the dad because he's a drunk, and the other doesn't because his dad was a drunk,
Yeah.
And so what was it for you? Because you very easily could have, and I don't know, maybe you did get in a bunch of fights. Maybe you could have went down this other trail. Like, what was it that made you buy into this idea that you are good at doing this horse thing and kept you on track, I guess? Can you remember back to then? Like, what was the inner dialogue whenever you were?
Well, I think the biggest blessing of it all was that I was a little too young to get into a lot of trouble, because I do have some older siblings and stuff, and that were way better than me, and are still in some of them. They were harder workers, they were just better, and they were older though. And I think that sometimes, it was the timing was a God thing, that I ended up getting to go, and my mom, she let me go, pretend to be an adult when I was 14 years old, move out, and and start she believed that I could do it. She would always I remember when I was a kid, she'd always say, if you can always train horses, but if you have to, you're kind of a salesman. If you got to go sell cars or something, you can train horses and sell cars, or train your own horses. You always kind of give me an out just in case it didn't work. But she was always supportive, and at the time, she wasn't in a great place to have a lot of influence on me at that time, but in terms of what life choices I made. But she supported them all. I hope I'm answering that question.
Oh yeah, yeah. When is the last time you would have seen your dad?
Well, there's a lot to that story too. I see my dad sometimes, from time to time. My brother got married here a while back. And I want to be clear on something. I think, like, when I say my dad said I couldn't do it, well, I think that was coming from a good place. He thought I should be in school. He thought I should graduate high school, do everything that you're supposed to do. He wasn't trying to tell me I was a failure. He was trying to, so I'm not accusing him of anything. It's not that way. I've seen him, periodically the last 20 years or something, but we don't have much of a relationship.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
How does that impact, and you don't have to answer any of this if you don't have to, but I know you have a son, Riggs. How does that impact you as a father?
I don't think it has any effect. I don't think my dad was a bad person or is a bad person. I don't think my mom ever, I think their intentions was to be good parents, and I think they were in a lot of ways, and I don't even that's not the part that influences me to try to be the best dad I can be. What influences me was that we were poor, we were broke, and we had to worry about gas money, and we had to worry about the propane bill, and a lot of times we didn't have it. We might not have electricity sometimes and stuff like that. And that is what is so important to me, I would like to make the most of myself in order to influence the people that, how would I verbalize that? The people that I could influence. I would like to make the most of myself in order to help anybody that needs that, around me, especially nieces, nephews, kids, my son. I want him to see that there is a path to anything you want in life. If you want it bad enough, then you can get any of it. And because when I was a kid, it was too far away. I would have never dreamed I would be sitting here talking, or you'd know who I am. That's just still kind of blows my mind, So back to the original, what chases you is that. I mean, I think I'm pretty confident and comfortable now in my life that I'm probably not going to fail to the point where I got to worry about paying my electric bill. But
I think that's the most dangerous person in the world, though. Those that have nothing to lose, and you've been there. Sounds like you've been there, and so you know what that's about. And there's truly, like, I hate to say it's a blessing. It's that's not what I want to convey, but it is
though. It is. I really think it is a blessing. I think it was all for a reason, and I think without that drive, which made me a pretty undesirable person for a long time, it's shocking that I'm still married and because the feeling that I was fighting resistance all my life, that I not only needed to get to the top, but I had to find the middle first. You know what I mean? I had to learn a lot of things in my life the hard way.
Talk about resistance. What do you mean resistance?
I think this pretend thing in your mind, and we all probably have this because all is relative, and I don't think my story's any harder than anybody else's, for the record. I think that all is relative in people's minds. You know, everybody goes through things in their life and it's all hard. But the resistance is this thing in your mind that where you think that there's something or somebody that's going against your plan, what you want, you know. You know, maybe I didn't have any money. I didn't learn a lot about taking good care of myself and how to speak to people professionally, and all those things were so this thing where I think that other people that had a normal life, graduated high school, I had a good family, but had a normal family, they had a head start. That's not true, but that's in your mind. So you think that you got to make up ground before you can even start, you know, and
you put yourself in the right places and then in the right situations too.
I think environment counts for a lot. What you put your attention to is what you're going to get better at, and what you put your attention to is largely influenced by the people and things you're around, you know. So the very lucky that I met my wife and got around some of these great people that I've shared with you, and I think that it influenced me. But the fear of failing kept, you know, it really gave me 10 years of my life that I would never want to relive, you know, and should have been 10 of the best years of my life, you know. I won a ton of money. I developed a ton of customers, and until I had a kid, I never even considered what I might seem like to the world. I didn't care. I needed to get there. I needed to get successful. I needed to have enough money to survive. I needed to own a home, things that were just didn't even seem possible, you know. I spent a lot of time making a lot of people, my wife, worry about me, and people just didn't understand why I was so frustrated all the time, because understanding that being a failure and having failures is very different things. So every time I would not do well in the show pen or lose a customer or something, to me that was just one step closer to failing. And then having a second place finish wasn't even a full step towards succeeding, you know. And to me, I think that's important to me to share with my son and any of the kids around. It's like how I was able to view the futurity this year is I think I learned some stuff that is going to cause me to win a lot more than I would have had I done good on accident and not learned those things.
Right.
So there's an upside to it. That mindset, it's really a hard thing to share, you know. It's a hard thing to explain, but I think that I understand it now. It's just keeping it a constant application in my life is a challenge, and I do better when my son's around, because, like I said before I had a kid, I never even considered what I seemed like to the world. Now, man, it matters a lot. It matters a lot.
In what way?
Well, I'll share this with you. So I commentated the 5-6-year-old finals the other night, and I hope that's
another gift of yours, dude. You commentated somewhere else, I think.
The futurity finals, probably.
Futurity finals, maybe. And I know that's something you don't want to do, because
I'd rather be busy. I'd rather be in the finals.
But yeah, you did a hell of a job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But I'll just give this example, and I'll use these guys because I have just the utmost respect for him. But Austin Shepard, he's one of my heroes, and I think he's a phenomenal dad. He's got a great family. He's a great horseman. He's everything that I've always wanted to be, you know. I commentated that finals, and Cade they're both such gentlemen, you know, and they don't do well and stuff. But he had a wreck in the end of his run, and he's trotting out, kind of jogging out right there, right where you'd ride right around behind the judges' stands, and he's taking his chaps off with his right hand, and he's got his reins in his left hand, and he's tipped his hat back. And that night, for fun, my wife and I were looking up some old commentated finals. Well, we look up a deal that Tim Smith commentated back in maybe 2004. Cade was maybe a year or two old. And I told Cade about this, and I want to put it together and show him. Austin Shepard has a wreck at the end of his run. And he has, the exact same reaction. The exact to where he started jogging, to the part of his chaps he started taking off, to tipping his hat back, to the whole to the T. And I mean, Kate was a year old because they were talking about how they had another kid on the way. And I just think that when you realize that in the world that you're either being influenced or you're influencing, those are your choices, you know. I think that, and none of that's a negative thing. It's just a proof of what I'm saying. Now that I have a kid, I know he's watching me. I know it matters how I act and respond to things and how I interact with people, everything to you know, my daily patterns and my reactions when things don't go good. And which, I mean, obviously, if my son would have saw my reactions 10 years ago, I couldn't have made a very good person out of him, you know, different than how Austin handles himself. So I just thought that was so funny to see the two of those, the reactions. You're talking 20 years difference.
Yeah.
And that amazed me. But that's that's why I think it matters so much.
Yeah, that's so true, man. We, like, your children become mirrors of whatever you are, or for that matter, you know, you're being conditioned. We're being conditioned every single day with whatever we're around. It just so happens when we're children, we don't really have a choice. Family is what you're around, so you're kind of born into it. But
yeah, I mean, I think what matters so much when the kids are really young is what they hear people saying about them when they're not even talking to them. And I think that because of my own childhood. I remember when I was a kid, people saying stuff about me. I remember we were to my neighbor's house. He was a horseshoer. His name was Otis. And Otis asked my dad, and my mom was there too, but my dad was answering these questions. Well, what do you think all these kids, there's 10 kids, what do you think they'll all be doing? And my dad pretty much answered it. I was the one out of the 10 that he said, you know, he'll be the most successful, and the rest of them, if they're not doing what I think, they'll be working for Monty. And I never forgot that, and I was just listening. You know, so a lot of that ended up being true, and in some ways, and I just remember other things. You know, my mom and grandma talking about it, that I had a gift with horses. Well, that wasn't true, but I believed them. You know what I mean? And just things like that. I think it's so important that you put that, you encourage that desire. Anytime you see a kid interested in something, you know, it's okay to always tell the truth, or at least don't lie to them. You know, but encourage those things. Man, you're really good at that. You know, they want to run track. You're fast, man. You're way faster than I was. Yeah. And those kind of things, I think, my son, when he was 3 years old, we used to play a math game. In other words, what's 1 + 1? And he gets to go first. I win if I get it, and if he gets it, he wins, you know. Well, then he started just getting real passionate about math. And, I mean, all of a sudden, he's 4 or 5 years old, and, I mean, he is incredible to me. But, I mean, just that encouragement, I think, that his mom and myself and, you know, have done. And I think that I think it's really important to encourage them when they have something that they like to do, you know, or even if there's something, I'm sorry to drag on about this, but if there's something that you don't like about them, to encourage them in a certain way, meaning, like, let's say that they sleep in all the time, or they sleep, you know, they sleep through their alarms and stuff like that. Well, the days they don't sleep through their alarm, you say, remember like 2 or 3 years ago, you used to sleep through your alarm every day, but now you get up early. I told you you'd start to want to get up early when you get a little bit bigger. Now you're older, now you got more responsibilities, and see, you don't sleep in, like, just find that time and then they start seeing themselves that way. And I am growing up. I'm getting bigger. I can go to work, you know, I got to get up and go do stuff, you know, things like that.
Yeah.
I put a lot of thought into all that.
Well, it all means something. Yeah, it's powerful. That changes the trajectory of that individual's life.
Yeah, it can influence the way they think the rest of their life. And I think that's Jordan Peterson says I think he says from 2 to 6 or 7 years old is the most important time that you develop there. Another thing he says that I love, he says, make sure that you like your children. He said, because of course you're going to love them. The likelihood of somebody else loving them without liking them is low. He said, oh, wow. He said, so it's your responsibility to make sure you have a person there that you like. You like how they act. You like how they interact with people. Because you love them, of course you're going to, you know. But I think that's the easiest way to make a decision on how disciplinary you may be, or how hard you may be on him throwing a little fit at the dinner table. Yeah. Like, oh man, he's only 3. Well, yeah, but I don't like that kind of behavior. So let's go outside and talk about this. You know, I would like to like how you act. I'd like to brag, take my friends to dinner, and be able to brag on you. You know. Yeah. I thought that was a very powerful thing I heard from him.
Oh, it's so true, and I'm sure that's an easy trap to fall into, the unconditional love. I don't have any children, but I can only imagine. Yeah. That it's hard to not see it through that lens, or see
Yeah.
it accurately.
Oh, it is. It is. It is. But I think just to realize, just to ask yourself that question,
Yeah.
you know.
So going back to mindset just a little bit, how do you recalibrate whenever you may be overwhelmed or maybe in a slump? How do you recalibrate your mindset?
I don't think I have to as much anymore.
You're a horse trainer, and you have to do that thing very, very well for people to want to send you horses to train, but you also have to run a business, and you have to be a businessman and do that do that effectively. And managing the two, I would think, in the beginning, could be overwhelming. If you, like you mentioned, losing customers for whatever reason. Cutting horse customers are fucking crazy. I've seen they can be. There's some great ones out there, but a lot of them can be fucking crazy. You can't say it. Trainers can't say it. I'll say it. What do you do whenever you maybe getting overwhelmed by the business of it, by the training aspect, all of the things? I know for me, I have to be alone. I have to meditate. I have to journal. I have to do these things, and that I find my center. What is it for you?
Yeah, I think I have the answer for that, because this is what I do. Is when I'm overwhelmed or I'm frustrated or things aren't going my way or whatever, I just get in my mind and do work. And what I mean by that is I work on what I want. And so I'll go ride a horse outside, or I'll go mow the irrigated fields, or I'll go for a drive, or I'll work horses by myself and nobody else in the arena, and just get in my mind to do work. What do I want to be? What do I want? Because this isn't it. Whatever it is that's going wrong is not what I want. So usually I'll just start to build a new vision in my mind of what I want my life to look like. And that's because that's the first steps, like we talked about earlier. I can't send the alphabet out and expect somebody else to construct the letters. So I usually just get in my mind and do work, and I really enjoy it. It energizes me to consider new things. And it's like 4 or 5 years ago, we were in a situation where costs have gone really gone up, and I really needed to figure out a way to make my business work, because really the training thing was not penciling. I've always wanted to be a cowboy. I've always liked the idea of owning cows, and growing up, my dad was the foreman of the Wine Glass Ranch, and that was a part of my childhood, and I've always wanted to own my own cows out there, but everybody would tell me that you can't do that. And I would, because of this and because of that, and basically what they were saying was you can't do that, and that's why, and that wasn't a good enough answer for me. So I got to thinking, I had to run in some numbers, and I thought, well, if I do this, I could kind of start slow. And I bought 18 head of buck and heifers that were cheap, and kept them, fed them for grazed them for 6 months, and sold them, and I did really well. So I took those and I bought more, and then I took that money and I bought more, and I took that money and bought more. Now there's 250 head of yearlings out there, and grew that, and I was able to not only cut the cow cost, the $4,000 a month it was costing me to keep cows, but then also have a profit, on top of that. And so by having that hard time where we were thinking we're going to lose a lot of customers, we're going to have to go way up on the training, I just got in my mind and did some work and figured out how to make that all pencil better. And so that's awesome. Just an example, I guess, of, well, there's a will, there's a way. If you're not mentally slothful and you're willing to get in your head and do the work, you can find it. There's always a way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So you're in California, man. Do you ever see yourself moving this way towards Texas?
And I get asked that all the time. How come you don't live in Texas? And I'm like, one reason is because this morning I wore a sweater out of the house, and then by the time I left, I thought we were going to have a tornado. And, so, I really enjoy the climate of California. I really enjoy the predictability of it. And we live in a beautiful area, and I've made such great connections. And I've just taught people, that are like family to me that I do business with there and stuff. So I'm not really sure what the future holds. You never say never, but I don't really want to live in Texas. I don't really want to. I lived here, kind of grew up here, and but that doesn't mean I never will, So I'm not really sure how to answer that. But right now, things are going very well out there in California for me.
And to put, I guess, more context around my question, folks that are in the industry do know, but folks that may be watching that aren't as familiar, I would say, over 75% of the horse shows are in and around the Fort Worth area?
Yeah, and not the ones I go to be 100% honest with you. I only go to 4 right here. I will do some weekend shows occasionally.
But then you got what, the BIs in Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
you got Graham, like there's a lot of aged event shows in and around the area. But so tell me about that, because I'm not familiar like with the West Coast shows and all of that stuff. What shows are you going to?
Well, so we have two major events in Vegas that the Pacific Coast
Right.
puts on. We have the Derby and the Futurity. Those are two of the biggest shows in the world outside the Triple Crown events, Will Rogers. And then we have Idaho Futurity in the fall. We have Cascades Futurity in the fall that are right before the Pacific Coast Futurity. So I have all those. We have the Pacific Coast Roundup in March, which is a large show the Pacific Coast puts on. And then numerous weekend shows. I mean, Arizona is huge for weekend shows, a lot of weekend shows in Paso Robles. And so really just because, I don't live here, so I don't typically do the BI and I don't do the Cattlemen's and those kind of shows, but I do the 3 Triple Crown events. I do the Bash. And between those 3, the Bash and the 2 in Vegas and the 2 in Idaho and Oregon, that's a sufficient amount of aged events to go to.
Yeah, and I can't argue with you about the weather, dude. I just got back from Wickenburg.
Yeah.
We went out there and roped for a week.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, it was nice.
Beautiful. Oh, my
Yeah.
God, yeah.
Yeah, I could see myself in Arizona or in that area. I'd love to be a day drive from Fort Worth instead of a 2-day drive. I think I'd love to do that.
How long is it? How long does it take?
It's if you drove it straight through, which I have done, which was a very bad idea, it's around that 28 hours, 30 hours or whatever. But, it's 2 days or 2.5 really. If a person really should like stop in Amarillo and then come in here the next morning, it's easier on the horses. But essentially it's 2 days. If I was in Arizona or Colorado or one of those places, it's a day drive to Fort Worth. It's not bad, But I love it there though. I mean, we got a beautiful facility and everything that I want is there. I'm also very close to town. I mean, I can shoot coyotes out my back porch, or I can be indoor skydiving in 20 minutes. So I love that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so speaking of that area, so in reference to like the clinics and teaching that you and Tim Smith are doing, what is the secret to effectively teaching people the art of cutting? And I'm asking that with a smile because when I first started,
I will say this, I would encourage everybody to learn steps, not just, I went too fast on that cut, that's why I went wrong. Sometimes you see people make real good cuts that are fast. So that's not necessarily that's not a good answer. I think that a person should learn, like I said, study the common denominators between everybody that does very well. Some people cut strong, some people cut slow.
But it's such a feel and timing thing. How do you teach that part?
I think probably the biggest key to lead off to, I think that they should have steps in their mind that they follow, things that they do. You need to want to do this worse than you want to do good. Whatever those steps are, and then add to them all the time. So if, for example, if somebody always cuts with their hand up in the air, waving their hand around, then I would encourage them to want to keep their hand low worse than they want to get a cow cut. So have things that you are planning, you're going to do them. You'd rather do these, they're what everybody that's winning is doing, and do those, and then over time you add and add and add. But number 2, become a better cowboy or cowgirl. Figure out what you can do. Get a job. Go turn back for Jesse Lennox at 3 a.m. when he's freaking out. Deal with that pressure and have a job and get better that way. Yeah. Get a horse, find some cows, do something with purpose with those. I think that is probably the biggest missing link. And you get these kids that grew up calf roping and barrel racing, and it just comes so much more naturally for them because they already understand how to be a good cowgirl or cowboy. I mean, they know how to use a horse to manipulate and influence cattle to get them to do what they want them to do, and that's a missing link. I think we start with these people that they're not good hands. They ride a horse well, they're not handy on a horse with cattle. And I think if you can find a way to put yourself in a position to get handier, which is going to be pressure, in whatever way you do it. But I think that's probably a key thing. But I wished I had a magical answer for you on that. But I think that you need to learn. You need to decide. People, it amazes me how many people don't realize that they don't watch the cow very good. Almost everybody doesn't watch the cow very good, except for the people that are, doing really well. So make up your mind that I'm gonna stare the cow down better. I'm gonna watch its eye or whatever you want to watch. But that is what matters to me in this run. Not doing good. I have to do this good every time. I need to execute this part of the process every time relentlessly like a machine, or else I'm never going to be consistent anyways. So I'd rather do this well than I would do good today. And then once you nail that and it becomes muscle memory, then you add to it. You know, what else can I add to it to make myself better? Leaning. I'm not going to lean. I'd rather lose the cow than lean. I'm going to sit straight down in the saddle, drop my shoulders to my hips, and watch the cow good. And I'm not lose a cow. I'm going to watch it go in the herd while I'm sitting straight down in my saddle. You know, but it's so hard to want to do a good job worse than you want to do good. So it's just find those things, whatever they may be, and then just keep adding to them.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, man. Everything you just said, I think you can apply no matter what. I will get in the habit. I listen to coaching, and then I come back out the next day ready to do that thing. And I'm thinking back, like when I was riding with James, and he'd be like, "What are you doing? Like that was yesterday. Like this is completely different, you know?"
Yeah.
And so like that's a whole other element
It
to
can
the
be
game.
frustrating.
Yeah. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck, dude? Like I did everything perfect.
This is exactly what you said yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday the cow was fast. This cow's just standing there looking at
Yes.
you. Yeah, there's only so many answers to that. And I've had a lot of people ask me, well, what do I do when somebody's coaching me to do something different than that? And I said, I only have one answer for that, and that's not easy. This isn't easy. But it's amazing how people will not argue with somebody that knows what they're doing. I said, so get to know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Be able to explain what you're doing. Be able to tell them what you're doing in the moment. Know what you're doing. So when you're lost is when everybody's screaming up, side, red, yellow, down, up, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
Put your hand down, turn your toes out. Well, all of a sudden when you know what you're doing, people will follow your lead.
Yeah, I agree. And it took me a few years to get to that point. I think a lot of amateurs get fucked up whenever their help puts them on a cow, and that's all they're focused on. And I finally got to the point to where I would just opt off. I didn't know the cattle like you guys do in the open, but I would just opt off and just cut shape. And I can remember riding out and James being like, that was a good call, like good move, like you did, it wasn't working, you know, but it took repetition and years to be confident and have, I guess, I'm not gonna say I had knowledge, but it just was a feel thing in the moment. But
yeah, there's so much we could get into about that and about showing. I mean, that's, you know, the biggest mistake people make when they find the cow is they want to cut it. And that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to communicate with your help, locate your cow, position the cow to be cut. We're all cut in shape. This is what Tim Smith said one time to one of our clinics. We're all cut in shape. He said the only difference is Monty takes more time to shape the cow he's cutting. It's not that he's not cutting shape. He's just putting it in the position to cut shape. So people find the cow and they follow it up the middle. Well, then you got all four helpers trying to chisel cows out of the way so you can get to the one, and then, you know, it's like, wow, you put too much pressure on me and it ran me over on that cut, or, you know, I couldn't get it to the outside. Well, that's because you started it out following it up the middle. You know,
the nuances that you guys are doing and the detail in which you're making this thing look effortless. I think that's where most people miss it, is because you can't tell what you're doing. As you're entering the herd, you're already shaping what you want to cut, right?
Yeah, there's a reason why we're entering the herd, where we're entering the herd. And you know, that's what I meant about doing more things on purpose, you know. But that takes a lifetime of study to really master. But that's why I encourage people to find something that you're going to do better no matter what. And that's your goal and prerogative. That's what you're going to do, and then add to it once you master it each time. And you know, you don't have to know it the way I know it in my mind to be down there and be a pretty good showman, you know. But I mean, you don't have to know all the things that we're talking about. Just continue to add to them. Keep your attention on good showman, and you know, you're going to get better at what you put your attention to, and that means the bad way too. If all you can think about is you're messed up, I always tell people, your runs, the bad ones, watch them once, throw them away. The good ones, watch them over and over and over again. Keep your attention on getting better. Keep your attention on people that show better than you. Keep your attention on good cuts. Somebody starts thrashing the cut, look away. Watch the guys that cut good, you know. Because you can certainly cultivate the opposite of what you want. By keeping your attention on it too.
I got to where I stopped going to I don't go to the amateur.
Well, I mean, obviously getting into the Riders Hall of Fame was a huge milestone for me. Just the thought that I got there, you know, was huge. But that's hard to answer. There's so many. I've had so many. Been fortunate a lot of times and different things. I've had some great runs. I think making the futurity finals 3 times is a huge one. Run for $1 million last year. I was second to Austin. was just what a relief it was to, because the year before I'd had a phenomenal run.
Yeah, year before what? Lost a cow?
Missed a cut. Kind of missed a cut at the very end, or I kind
Yeah.
of missed a cut. I was committed to a cow and it ducked, and
You had a badass run going.
yeah, I had
that.
I had a great run going. So the redemption there a little bit was probably the best feeling I've ever had, of relief of surviving a really good run. You know, second at the Super Stakes on Steel Betty, that was a big one. But I don't really have a single one. I'm just so grateful that I have to think about that.
Yeah,
I'm so grateful that there's some to think about, because it's still pretty hard to believe, you know, that all that's happened. It doesn't make it any, you know, like I tell younger guys, I'm like, I got good news for you. It doesn't get just because you've won this or won that. You know, that's great and everything, but what matters is what you do now. You know, what you got to continue to get better, and you got to continue to improve. And I loved what Jesse said on one of your podcasts in here, which is the work that really matters is the work you did 3 years ago. I mean, that is one of the most powerful, true sayings I've ever heard in my life. I mean, and that is really true. And the only thing I'd add to that is what your attention was on while you were doing that work. You know, you know, it's like you got a 2-year-old, you're working with it, and I mean, are you expecting this to be a great winner for you, or are you just mad at it all the time, or, you know, worried about the fact that it does this wrong or does that wrong, or are you just trying to cultivate the best out of that horse? And I thought that was a great saying.
Some of you just mentioned Steel Betty. I'm thinking of Cat Play, Highbrow Jackson. You've ridden quite a few good horses. What is it that those greats have in common?
The common denominator between, I think, all great horses, because I've thought about that a lot. And some great horses are high-headed, some great horses are low-headed. Some of them are big and strong, some of them are little bitty. Some of them are roan, some of them are sorrel. But the difference between a good horse, I think, and a great horse is a good horse gets really good at mirroring a cow, and their timing's good. A great horse is competing with the cow. A great horse is crouched down in their own unique way to manipulate their body in whatever way they can most efficiently get to this place they need to get to stop, to trap the cow. That's the difference, and you can't teach them that necessarily. You know, you can't. You know, Highbrow Jackson wasn't a fast horse. Steel Betty was lights out fast and downhill, but both of them, all the great runs I ever had, all I had to do was go get in front of the cow and then just sit there and get out of the way and let them compete. You know, a good horse, you got to manipulate constantly, and you're holding them and you're keeping them in position to look good in front of a cow. And a great horse takes over and competes with the cow. They understand it's like if me and you were running back and forth and my job was to match you, or is my job to keep you from getting past me. All of a sudden my stance changes, my demeanor changes, my focus on you changes, because I can't let you past me. If my job's to mirror you, I just try to run back and forth with a normal stance. You know, that's the difference, I think, in a great horse and a good one.
How did you come to get the Steel Betty? And I'm going to ask you the same question about Cat Play too, because you got them older when they were older.
Older,
right?
Yep. Steel Betty was 5 or 6, I think, and I bought her from Andy Christensen at Idaho, and a lot of people told me not to buy her. A lot of people didn't like her, and I ended up getting her for a very, very fair price,
Really?
because there was doubt as to whether she was very good or not, or the kind of horse we thought she could be. And I bought her for a very good price, and you know, she took me just a little while to get with her and get things the way I wanted them, and then she just went on a tear. She was amazing. I mean, just what a horse she was and is still.
I'm curious to know what was it that you saw that other people were trying to talk you out of? Like,
Well, I think that other people maybe saw her limitations. She was low. She was downhill. But what I saw was her desire to compete with a cow. Every time it was between her and the cow, it looked amazing. And when the rider had to start to force things and get to certain spots, or try to get her to wait, or, you know, try to manipulate her position on a cow, it's pretty ugly. So I thought, well, if I could get it in her mind that when she takes over, I'll go away. When she takes over, it makes me disappear. And I thought there was a chance that might work, and it did, you know, and she was a special horse. But I also got her at a price just in case I was wrong, you know.
Yeah.
Because there's that possibility.
right.
You know, Dual Cap Pepto is another great horse that people don't bring up very much, that I won 300 on, and he was an average athlete, average expression, average build. But when you put your hand down, he was a gamer. He was competing with the cow. Wasn't just mirroring it. He didn't want to let it past him. You know, he was as big a winner at that time as any horse I'd ever ridden. I thought the same thing about Cat Play when I bought him from Hayden. And Hayden had done really well on him, and so had the customers and stuff. But I don't think anybody, including myself, expected him to have the kind of journey he's had. Been an incredible horse.
What would be the first horse you ever rode that had that in him, that kind of woke you up to the idea like, oh shit, there's this other level of horsepower out there?
I mean, I think in terms of a horse that actually competed with a cow and was Starlight's Little Cat. She was a WR mare, one of the first ones I trained, and she was just electric and fast and unbelievable. And I did really good. First horse I ever made the Pacific Coast Futurity finals on, so she was a great one. The first horse I made major finals on was a mare that Morgan Cromer trained, a C.D. Olena mare. I'm drawing a blank on her name at this moment, that Kim Thome owned, and that was when I realized, holy mackerel, like these horses are capable of so much more than what I knew. But I've never felt anything like Cat Play when he's on his game. I mean,
really? How old is he now?
He's 8, I think, 8 or 9, yeah, 8. But when he's got a cow where he wants it, there's nothing like that. I mean, he's incredible. And I mean, I've had other horses that were great in all kinds of different ways, but there's something about the way he balances, and he's got them hydraulics, and he gets down, and he's got that type of strength, and just really incredible. And I've said this before, though, like without having them at the same time, it's a little hard to compare. And I don't know, with the skill set that I've developed to this point, maybe I could have done more on the ones that I had before. Maybe. I don't really know. We'll never know. But I hope I have another one that I wonder if he's better than Cat Play or not. I wonder if I knew what I know now. I hope this happens again. But he's been incredible.
Are there many other, this is a broad question, but any other like Kit Kats out there out of a Playgun mare?
We thought about that at one point, and I don't know that. I mean, there's been some amazing ones, but I don't know about out of a Playgun mare.
Yeah, because isn't that Cat Play's out of a Playgun mare, right?
I believe so, yeah. NQH Shadow Play. Yeah, I think she was I think you're right.
No.
Didn't really matter to me. He was such an individual. I didn't even care how he was bred when we bought him. He's just such a special. Debbie Day that owns him got on him and worked him, and I didn't even need to work him. She said, "You work him?" I said, "I don't need to." She wanted me to, so I've made a few turns. I'm like, I've seen everything I need to see, And he had always caught my eye.
Yeah.
And I'd been trying to buy him from Hayden forever. And he wasn't for sale when we did get him bought, but Hayden says, "Well, I'll try again." He calls him, and the timing was perfect. And
yeah, that's awesome. So what's next, man? You're not hauling this year, are you?
Well, no, and I haven't really hauled for the last several years. I just have had Cat Play, so I didn't have to haul.
Gotcha.
He would win when I went, and so I am doing that again. I'm going to show him everywhere I go. Hope to make the Open World Finals again. Debbie's showing him some this year as well, wherever we go. So yeah, it'd be nice to make that World Finals again. And my focus really is just on trying to build a little bit stronger aged event set of horses, because I did weekend and haul for so many years. It kind of took away from that. Try to concentrate. I'd like to scale back a little bit, as I have, and I would really like to concentrate on some of the core people that have intention to help me with my goals, and those are the people I want to make sure that I have time to give attention to theirs. Not that I don't want to ride horses for any particular person. I just want to make sure I would like to scale it to a point that I have a little bit more time for my family and a little bit more time for the people that care about how I do as well, and not that anybody doesn't care. I don't want that taken the wrong way, but that's probably what's next for me, is to try to dial that down a little bit and a little more focused program. And there was a time we had so many horses. I remember we brought 73 horses to the Cascades Futurity 4 or 5 years ago, and what a marathon that was.
Holy shit. How much help did you have at that time?
And I don't even remember. There was so much that we tried to have one person for every 5 or 6 horses, but we hauled that one year. We had 18 world finalists, and every given show we'd have somewhere between 35 and 55 horses on average. At every one of those weekend shows, and I'm glad I did that, because I learned so much. But I'm sure glad I'm not doing it anymore.
Yeah, I bet.
That was a lot of personalities and a lot of horses, and
yeah,
man,
a lot of early mornings.
Yeah. Very early mornings and late nights.
Yeah. All right, dude, let's roll into some rapid fires. Feel free to answer these as fast or as slow as you want. I'm just going to ask them in a rapid manner. I don't think I mentioned we're at the Kimes Ranch store down in the stockyard, so thanks to Kimes Ranch for the studio space. And first question, man, what is your favorite Western movie?
John Wayne and the Cowboys.
Dude, I think that was my first Western to ever see.
Greatest movie ever. Man from Snowy Rivers, I mean, close second, but John Wayne and the Cowboys, come on.
Yeah.
If you don't like that movie, you ain't living. Something's not right.
What is a book that you have either gifted most to other people or reread the most?
Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles.
Science of Getting Rich. If you could go to any time period for 1 week, when and where do you go?
I think I'm living probably the best time of my life right now. I'm enjoying it the most, and there's a lot of it I don't want to go back to, even though it was all great. It was just my mindset at the time and how difficult it was. So I think I'd choose right now.
Mm-hmm. I meant to ask this earlier. I think this happens every rapid fire session, but if you could give advice to like a young trainer coming up, what advice would that be? Someone that's decided, yes, I'm going to be a horse trainer. They've started down the path.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them?
If I could do it all over again without worrying about it, if I could do it if I could understand that having a failure is different than being a failure, and if I could understand that the emotion, the negative emotion, and the times you spent beating yourself up and losing sleep was an absolute fucking waste of time. I mean, and how much you beat yourself up. I mean, I remember being to the point so frustrated. You know, my wife would try to give me a hug, and it worried me so much that she thought I needed a hug. Like that was so hard on me, and then I'd be mean to my wife about it. You know, because not me, you know, but like she would not understand why I didn't want to be around her. I don't want you to I'm not that guy. I don't want to be that person. You know, I want to be the kind of person that doesn't have that it doesn't weigh on them that hard because I'm successful. I don't need to worry this much. And it would just eat me alive, you know, and you spend so much time worrying if it's going to work or not. And that's a distraction. Get up every day and do the work. And you don't need to outwork anybody. Whatever anybody else is doing has nothing to do with your journey or God's plan for you. You just get up and do the work that needs done that day. You got 7 3-year-olds, you got 7 to ride. You got one to ride. You don't need to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning to work that one because that's what everybody else is doing. You don't need to ride it for an hour. You need to do the work that you feel needs done, and quit worrying about it. But I mean, be a student, obsess over it. I'm not saying don't obsess over it. You need to get better fast. You are wasting your time and emotions, and it's a distraction to spend time disappointed in yourself. I really wished I could have done that, and I hope in the future I can, you know.
Yeah.
I think I'd love for people to be able to achieve what I've achieved or more and enjoy it. I was not able, but now that's why earlier I said, where would you choose if you could go back in time? I'd go now. My son has probably had a lot of influence on the way I see the world now and stuff, but yeah. I think that probably, in the shortest version, that'd be, I'd love to see somebody go up through the ranks of coming from nothing to being what they want to be, and be able to enjoy that, because I wasn't able to do.
You mentioned 3-year-olds. What the question you trainers hate to answer? What good 3-year-olds you got this year? You just have to name 2.
Well, the 2 that I probably. I got a metallic gray mink stud that I think's really nice.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I bought him from Chet Semino, and then I have a cap mare that I think's really good. I think I'm really fortunate this year. I think I got a good problem on my hands. I think I got several that are really good, really nice. I mean, I enjoy training them anyway. We'll see how they are as show horses, but I wake up. I don't need an alarm to get up and go work them. I like them a lot.
What about the horse that Kenny won the futurity on? I heard rumored that if one of his other horses didn't get hurt, that was going to be a catch ride for you.
Yeah, and I hope that's public enough that I could talk about it. But yeah, so it was funny. I was supposed to show that horse. I had my mare, and Kenny had told me early in the year, he said, hey, I've got 3 really good horses, at least 3. And he said, so if you can save me a spot, and it was convenient enough to do that. I showed the rest at small fraternities, and we got down to the fall, and he, he'd say, yeah, I think this is going to be your gelding. This other mare's just doing so dang good. But it's a hard deal. He said, I'm telling you, no BS. It's a hard choice for me, but I think this mare is going to suit me a little better, just at least for the fraternity. And I mean, he sent me a video of her, of him 4 days before the futurity, and I'm planning on showing him. I show up at the pre-work at a Don's to work him, and he goes, "Man, I got bad news. My mare's limping." And he said, "So I'm gonna have to show this gelding." He said, "So I got another one if you want him," but I had a customer that had one. Cowan's had one. And I said, "No, it's no big deal." And he wins the futurity on him. So I always tell him every time he marks at 2:30, whatever, I said, "Hey, you remember that one time when I was going to show that # gelding for you?
Yeah.
And then you won it, and then won the futurity on it."
Yeah.
So that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and you mentioned him earlier, man. He's lights out right now. I feel like every time you look at the scoreboard, you see Kenny Platt 222 plus. You know, 224, 2 something.
Yeah, he's a great friend of mine, and we talk about all the same stuff we're talking about. And I mean, he's, everybody, it's funny, they see him, they're like, "Man, this Kenny's really come on," and it's like, well, he's been working at that for a very long time, and he's had the skill set that he has for a very long time. I don't know that he's had the mindset, but he's had the skill set, and he's trained a lot of average horses and done very good on them, and now he has a great string of horses, and he's able to capitalize and show himself, his family, the world, what he's capable of if he has what he needs to get the job done. And it's really fun to watch. I mean, a winner likes to see other winners win, and I've always enjoyed that thought process, because what it does every time somebody achieves something that that other people have not achieved yet, that to me is just proof that it's possible. Mm-hmm. You can be that good, you can be that consistent, you can, if you want to, you can get to that point if you're willing to go through the pressure and the work that it takes to get to that level. But he's as good as anybody in the world right now. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, his confidence is up, and his horsepower is strong, and his family life is awesome, and everything that he has going on is what, I'm sure he's worked to get to this point in his life for a very long time.
Yeah. He's another one not living in Texas.
Yeah, he lives in Colorado.
Doing the thing at a very high level. Who's an up-and-comer that we need to be looking out for?
There's so many good hands, and I hate to answer that question because there's a lot of good hands. Out in California, Eric Ferreira, that worked for me for 10 years and got his own deal going, he's coming on, man. His horses look great. He's got a good thing going. But somebody that's caught my attention here just in the last several Triple Crown shows has been Jose Cruz, because he's so damn studious. Mm-hmm. And he pays attention to when people talk if he asks them a question. And he really makes an effort to improve. And I think he's going to outwork him in his mind. And I think he's going to, if he can get the horsepower to demonstrate what he's capable of, along with the mindset and the skill set that he's developing, I think he's going to do some amazing things. And I mean, I could say that about so many. I mean, like this Gavin Callahan kid, we're the freaking youth kid in the open, kicking everybody's ass. I call him a youth kid just to make fun of him. I mean, I know he's not a youth, but I mean, he just shows like that with that kind of confidence, And there's so many of them. I mean, there's just so many good hands anymore. It's just seems like the information online and what you can, if you're willing to do the work, how fast you can get good at this is incredible.
Yeah. What is the most embarrassing moment for Monty Buntin in the show pen?
Really think I was always too busy being frustrated to be embarrassed. I think probably helping, probably I can't really think of a particular time, but when I mess somebody up, if I mess them up on a cut or something, when it's, and of course, you got to have thick skin around this game. Everybody in the turnback line is ready to jump and feast every time there's an opportunity to take somebody down a notch.
Speaking of, what about that Dufferina run that he got a rewrite on?
Yeah, that was crazy.
But that was turnback help.
Yeah.
Fell off the horse, right?
Yeah. Cass Tatum fell off his horse. That was funny. Same thing. I mean, everybody jumped on him like a bunch of hyenas, including me. So, that was crazy, and I think that was circumstantial. There had been some wrecks recently, and in the show pen, and I think that in the judges department, they're trying to work out what to do with a lot of that, and one of the ideas is to stop it. Now, under this scenario, I'm not sure he was doing good enough to make the finals at the time when that all happened, but then he got a reride and did good enough. I think that's something probably the judges department needs to analyze or is going to, I'm sure. Andy works very hard to improve all the time, and I don't really know any of the details going on with all that, but I know that there was a bit of an uproar. You know.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure there was. I was just getting at the fact that I'm sure y'all gave Cass a pretty good
Oh man, we
dose of it.
we jumped in his business. Yeah. What else are we gonna do?
Yeah. What was your favorite cartoon growing up?
I didn't really ever got real hooked to a cartoon or anything like that. You know, we had, I liked The Man from Snowy River. I liked John Wayne and the Cowboys. We had, we didn't have TV.
You
know,
just
at one
bypassed
time.
cartoons and went to grown folk stuff.
Yeah, well, kind of. I did. Yeah, I always wanted to be a grown up. When I was a kid, I never wanted to be a kid. I didn't like being a kid at all, and that's why I'm so glad my son does. But I hated school. I wanted to go to work with my dad. I wanted to get a job. I wanted to, you know, when I was 11, I started a business and I got a sign and I got business cards and I bought my first cell phone and you know, Monty Wayne's horse training is what it was called. That sign hangs in my office now. And, you know, I wanted to be seen as an adult. So, yeah, I didn't spend much time. I didn't really have a lot of kids that were friends, very few. Hung out with adults and, you know, that was kind of just maybe I don't know, that was just the way I was.
Right on. What scares you?
I try not to really ever worry about how I'm going to get through things if they happen that way. But I mean, obviously, not really sure what I'd ever do with losing my family in some way. I guess that'd be the only thing that I try not to ever think about. But I mean, I handle it really well when distant family members and stuff go and stuff like that. But they're my whole life, you know. So that scares me a little bit. Mm-hmm. There's some of that's out of our control, and I know that. But I see things happen in people's lives, and I can't imagine.
Mm-hmm. All right, my friend. Last question: if you could put a message on a billboard, metaphorically speaking, to get it out to millions of people, what does your message say?
There's so many things like that I think about, and there's so many of those. But the one that comes to mind is what you see in your mind, you'll hold in your hands. And I think, or I should say, what you hold in your mind, you'll hold in your hands. I think it was probably one of the early things like that stuck with me.
Dude, I appreciate it. Time is our most valuable asset, so I thank you for sharing it with me and listeners. I would like to plug your clinics, though, if folks are interested in coming out to see you and Tim Smith.
That.
Where can they find you?
You know, I don't think we kept going with the website. I think it's just all on social media. But if you look up the Cut and Pen, Cuttin, the Cut and Pen, Buntin and Smith, if you look that up on Instagram or Facebook, you can certainly get in contact with the people that run all that for us and stuff, and we'd love to have anybody's.
Do y'all have anything coming up?
We don't have one scheduled in the near future. I think we for sure do the one in January every year, but we've been doing one in the summer or the fall every year too, but it's not booked yet. But I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, of course, buddy.
Yeah.
Well, Monty, I sure appreciate it, man. And when will we see you next? Well, I'm trying to think. What's the next show?
Well, I'll probably
Derby.
Still here for another month. It seems like we got the Super Stakes going on till the 15th, so I'm sure I'll see you around here somewhere.
Right on.
Yep, and then we'll be back here at the Derby.
Right on. Cool, buddy. Thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of
Enjoyed
course.
it.
Yes, sir. That's a wrap.